Hello, LinkedIn Live, and welcome to my friend Alyssa. We're so happy to have you here. Alyssa, we're going to talk about a bunch of things. We're going to talk about a little bit how to help PR experts kind of be prepared for the next thing that's coming. We're going to talk about AI, your journey. Super excited. Every time you're on, I'm really, really happy. I love talking to you. How are you doing, Alyssa?
I am doing great. Just so excited to be here with you today. It's always a blast when we get to talk, and even more when we get to share our conversation with everyone else.
Absolutely. And I'm super excited because you always have some great gems. So, we're not going to talk about anything that is happening right now, but with the age of AI, I feel like crises come to us so much faster. How do you deal with with heading a PR department in the age of AI, which everything seems to go so fast?
Everything is definitely sped up in the age of AI, and you know, it presents a number of different challenges. I think, first of all, just the information that gets out in public does seem sped up. And some of that's AI, some of that is social media. There's a number of different factors there. But before we even drill in further to that, it might be interesting for our audience just to, consider like what is a crisis? Right? So thinking as a PR professional, what constitutes a crisis these days, right? I mean, we operate in such an environment of heightened stress and anxiety. Everything seems like it might be a crisis, right? I mean, and everything's hitting you in social media, and it's like, oh my God, I got to pay attention to this. I got to pay attention to this. Somebody said this, right? So, you know, I think we're at this time in our society, we're really primed for everything to be like to seem like a crisis. And in that environment, I think it's even more important to be critical when you approach something about whether or not it actually reaches crisis proportions. And what is some one person's crisis is going to be somebody else's sort of like ho hum yon yon, right? So the first thing I always remind my team is yes, like information is going to get out there fast. We're going to probably get questions from reporters faster than we ever did before. You might see stuff popping up on social media faster than ever did before. That doesn't mean it's a bigger crisis. It just means that the scope of managing it might be larger and the speed with which we need to manage it might be faster. But it doesn't mean it's more of a crisis, right?
Yeah,
So I think
it
that's
doesn't mean
really
the
important.
crisis is worse. It just means we need to be more cognizant that it's going to come in fast and we need to deal with it fast. So the speed changes, but not the severity.
Right, exactly. Unless scope factors into severity or speed factors into severity, right?
Yes.
So sometimes speed can work against you and it can make a crisis more severe because you don't have as much time to do your triage, right? Sometimes it's not clear when you're in the middle of a crisis what's actually happening, right? And so you need that time, especially if you want to set your story straight in the public domain. um you need some time sometimes to figure out like what's actually happening, who's actually involved, how big of an issue is it, right? And speed can work against you obviously in that context because if another story takes off before you have a chance to get out ahead of it, that's going to be problematic for you. So I think one of the things that's problematic for technology companies in particular right now, um, is every time there's an incident, I think the first question that people wonder is that external? So was my healthcare company hacked? Was my technology company hacked, right? Is that what is going on here if I'm having trouble accessing? And so obviously if that's not what's happened, if it's something that's an internal controllable root cause, you want to get that information out quickly, but it might also not be immediately evident to you exactly what that root cause is. So you have to balance like knowing what to say to be factual with, stamping down any suspicions that are going to potentially blow this up into a bigger reputational issue than it needs to be.
I love that. So tell me if I'm wrong, because this is your realm. But I feel like with the age of AI, like back in the day, we could see a crisis come in, so we can maybe plan for it, and maybe we didn't have to act immediately because we had a warning system that this is coming. Now with AI, it's coming right now. So I think in a lot of ways, instead of like preparing for the storm, you almost need to run towards the storm just to figure out what's going on. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, I mean it's a great point, right? And it's funny. I think preparation is key, and I think there's ways you can use AI to help with preparation, and then there are some ways in which AI might exacerbate the situation. So let's break both of those down, right? So certainly we just talked a little bit about one of the ways in which AI might exacerbate the situation, which is just sort of like speeding up the ability of like information to spread quickly. And the old adage, a lie makes its way around the world three times before the truth has a chance to get out of bed, right? So
Mhm.
especially in a crisis situation, you know, if something gets out there that is untrue or unhelpful to you, even if it is true, you've got less time to worry about that. And in that case, I think you're right. You got to run into the storm and just kind of figure out what's hitting me and how quickly can I get up an umbrella, right? But you can also use AI to help you prepare, right? So, for instance, if you've got playbooks for different scenarios that you might expect to come up for you, and by the way, if part of your job is managing crisis or managing crisis communications and you don't have playbooks, that is your homework assignment for tonight. Start now. The best time to prepare for your next crisis is yesterday.
Yeah.
But AI can also be really helpful for that, right? Because we've got tons of tools now at our fingertips that actually can help us um, not just sort of recap past scenarios and maybe call out learnings from those that weren't evident to us in the moment when you're sort of in the thick of managing it, right? So I can build a tool that says, hey, look at my postmortem of my last crisis and summarize for me the key findings or the key learnings that a crisis manager would need to focus on, right? I can give an LLM that role to play a crisis manager and like really drill in and figure out what I might have missed in the moment. And then I can also ask an AI tool to help me refine those playbooks for future looking scenarios, right? So I actually
Can
the
you
age
can
of
you give us an
AI.
example, sorry, of a playbook, Alyssa? Can
Yeah.
you give us an example of like what you prepare because you lead PR for a huge organization that stuff happens all the time. How do you prepare your playbooks, and what would you recommend our audience to start prepping their playbooks for?
That's a great question. And again, it all comes down to what sort of scenarios you think you may need to face. And and not just the ones you think you may need to face, the ones you never want to have to face. Because chances are good your worst nightmare is going to be the next thing that comes up for you, right? It's always that's what makes it a crisis, right? So we actually playbook things from sort of like minor issues all the way up to sort of like nightmare scenarios, because you have to, because it's your opportunity to project what you would need to handle in the moment and then make sure that all the things that you need to have are at your disposal for that moment, right? So I think it's good to start playbooks with triggers, right?
Okay.
What are things that would happen that would cause you to have to take action, right? If you don't have to take action, it's probably not a crisis, right? A crisis is something that demands a response. So, with playbooks, you start from what's that trigger? What is the trigger that would let you know, oh, I'm in a crisis now, right? So, if you're a technology company, it could be my system goes down or slows down to a point where it's problematic, right? If you're, I don't know, a nonprofit, it could be something like somebody that we're partnering with has a reputational crisis. Now we're being associated with them, right? So, I mean, I don't want to sort of like prognosticate too much about what all the crises are that our audience might be facing. You need to figure that out for yourself, but then figure out what's the trigger that would let me know, okay, time to take action. And then in that playbook, what you want to figure out is, here's the trigger. What's the action that I would need to take? And then work backwards. What's all the information I would need to have at my fingertips in order to take that action? Who are the sources, or what are the sources of that information, right? I need to know who that partner is. I need to have news available to me. I need to be able to monitor social media. I need to have all these things at my fingertips. I need to have my alerts set up in advance so that I know what's happening. I need to there are websites out there, for example, that will tell you when a system is down, right? I need to set up an alert on that because systems that I'm dependent on, I need to see if they're going to be down as well. Um, so all I think aligning those sources of information in a playbook is really critical. And then that's sort of like your inputs, and then there's your outputs. Who do I need to communicate to? Who do I need to get approvals from before I take the action that I know I need to take? You know, where where do I expect inbound to come from, and what am I prepared to respond to reporters or others that are coming in to ask me questions? So all of that has to go into your playbook. And then also the channels through which you are communicating, right? So there's channels through which you're receiving information, the channels through which you have to distribute information as a PR professional. And you need to make sure all of those things are available to you, up and running at the time of your crisis. And if one of your crisis scenarios isn't, what happens if those sources are not available to me, or if those channels are not available to me, then you're not doing it right.
It's so funny, you talk about crisis management, and I have military background. It is almost like exactly the same. So you in the military, you got to practice for every scenario. If not, when it happens, you won't be ready, and then you lose your life, or something bad like that will happen. And everything is cutting backwards. So I love that. And again, crises can come in many shapes and sizes, and depending on what you do, you run PR for a huge organization that is always in the news, so you deal with a lot. The people here that do PR for more of like customer facing organizations, where a PR crisis could be a bad review, are those things that we need to write playbooks for?
I would say so, right? So if you are concerned about information about your company going viral and spreading among your consumer base very quickly, and again, in the age of AI, something that is 100% likely to happen. Yeah, and again, as I said, you have to decide what a crisis looks like for you. If a bad review on a crowdsourcing site is something that's a problem for you, maybe it's a bunch of employees, complaining on a website like Blind or Indeed, right? So if those are crises that you have to manage, then you absolutely should playbook those out. And the good thing about being in PR is that usually in our crises, your life is not on the line, and there are incidents where that may be true, but not so much as in the military. Um,
I've got to share this with you. I just wrote a column. I don't know if they're going to advertise it or not, but they asked me to write something, so I did, to Entrepreneur Magazine. And in that, they asked me to share about something that I have that means a lot to me, and it's my old dog tag. And in that article, how I get perspective and how I pass through hard days is I go back 20 years or 30 years, and my life now is not in danger. The worst I can get is fired or have a client that is a little bit unhappy, and I'll fix it. But life is so much better, and we're not dealing with life and death. And this is something that's important to remember in the situation, because we all tend to get, aggressive and maybe a little bit too anxious, and we're not dealing with lies. We're dealing with important things, but it's not life to death. Hamad has a question here. Given the inevitability of a crisis, what is the most common mistakes companies make in their initial response, and how can they avoid it? Great question, Hamad. Straight to you, my dear.
yeah, it's a great question, Haman. Thank you so much for that question. Um, I think unfortunately, it's not an easy question to answer because there's lots of things that you can do wrong in that moment. and you may not even know how wrong you've gone until later, right? I think we can all think of very public situations in the past where, for instance, a CEO responded in the moment in a way that they felt was authentic and genuine, and later on turned out to really not ring true with the masses, or presented them in an unfavorable way. Um, I think, actually touching back on what you were just talking about, the number one thing that companies can do wrong in their initial response is not stay calm, right? Remember that, most of the time in a corporate PR crisis communications situation, um, nobody's losing their life usually, right? That's not always true, and there may be people here who work for airlines or other companies where certainly your crisis may and sadly and tragically involve that. But for most of us, most of the things that we deal with from a corporate crisis standpoint are not going to reach that level of tragedy.
Thank God. Yes.
Right? Thank God. Yes. And so staying calm, and but even when that is a factor, as a PR professional, you must stay calm, right? That's actually part of the value you're contributing to that moment, is to, keep your own head clear and be able to be a strategic advisor to your executives and those who are dealing with the crisis in the moment, to be able to provide that perspective, to be looking outside yourself, outside your company, getting a measure of the market, the conversations that are happening, being able to weigh all of that and thinking about what your response needs to be, how fast it needs to be, and who needs to give it. Right. So, from the perspective of the communications professional, I would say your number one mistake is going to be giving into panic in a moment of crisis.
Love that. And Hamad, I'll answer the question too. Sometimes if you don't know where you're running, you might be running the complete opposite direction you need to go. So before you start running, you got to understand the situation. You got to understand where the danger is coming from and what's a threat and what's not. So I think I've seen a lot of companies just start running, and then it takes them a minute to figure out they're running to the other direction. So that's where I'm thinking now. Alyssa, can you share with us a little bit about you, your journey, how you got? I know you started in communication. Now you're more into crisis, but I think there's a lot of our viewers, a lot of people would like to know a little bit about your story and how you got to where you are, and how you keep up with really demanding executives and an extremely demanding job and still do it so gracefully.
Oh, thank you for that. That's very kind of you. Yeah, thankfully, my career has not veered all the way into crisis. I think crisis is just something that we all need to be able to deal with. I'm fortunate to be in a position where I do get to work very closely with all of our teams cross-functionally when we do have incidents, because my role is the head of communications for our product and technology business lines. So often the things that I'm dealing with are going to be incidents dealing with our products and technology. And for that reason, I'm very fortunate that I get to work with all of those folks in managing those incidents, whether they reach crisis proportions or not, right? Um, so even though I get to wear the crisis crown probably more than I'd like to, I still do have a very broad swath of responsibilities across communications. And actually, I didn't start in communications. I started in marketing many,
Marketing, yep.
many, many
I
moons ago.
misspoke. Yeah.
That's fine, but I started in marketing many, many moons ago. And most of what I had done in marketing was in product marketing. And because I was in product marketing, I was always highly aware of product life cycles and product life cycle disruptions. Right. And so I actually like to think that I started studying crisis back when, as a product manager, the idea of crisis was we missed a launch date. Right. So, um,
How
you
things
know,
change.
how things change. Right. Um, so I think, my career has evolved, always staying sort of within product, within technology, um, moving from product marketing into more of an analyst relations focus at one point because I really got very interested in understanding buyer influence. This is something that if our folks online are dealing directly with consumer marketing or consumer communications, obviously buyer influence is something that's going to be near and dear to your heart as well. It is also very important in the B2B environment where we're often dealing with higher ticket investments and therefore more influencers on buyers could be consultants or industry analysts or the media. And so following that sort of like influence on buyers and influence on public perception led me right into the arms of communications. So
That is awesome. And how do you continuously prolong your career? And how do you go? You went from marketing to communication. Now you head a big division and you deal with crisis too. What advice do you have for people in the audience that want to grow their career in marketing, in communication, and maybe even in crisis?
yeah, I think part of it is just get up every day, look around and see what needs to be solved. Right. I if I've somebody asked me on a networking call, we were all asked to sort of give our secret superpower. And
Mhm.
I said I honestly think I have two of them. And one of them is I'm able to squeeze 48 hours of work into a 24-hour day. I'm not sure that's anything that anyone should aspire to, by the way. I'm not sure that's a good thing. Sometimes it's necessary. But my second superpower was I really have an innate ability to find the problem that no one else has solved yet and solve it, right? And it's not always going to be the best solution, but it's the solution that works in the moment until we find another solution. So being able to look around you and say, you know what, that's a problem. Ideally I can solve it before it becomes a problem, right? Put something in place and then hand it off to whoever's better suited to solve it or work on something that's a longer term solution. um, if that's the approach you take every day to your job, you will be able to grow your responsibilities, grow your influence within your organization, grow your resume and your relevance and your attractiveness to future employers. Or and also I think it's a way to lead one into a career like yours where you've solved problems and then built your own business to do that, right? So I actually think, just looking for those problems to solve and not being afraid to jump in and solve them.
I love it. I've always seen myself as a problem finder more than a problem solver because most times that I go into a company, the problems that are being shown are not really the real problems. They're the perceived problems, and you got to dig in and kind of figure out what the problem is. Now, this is one of my favorite questions, and I can't wait to hear your answer. Alyssa, if you had your 25-year-old self right next to you and you had a few minutes with your 25-year-old self, what advice would you give 25-year-old Alyssa?
Oh, wow. Um, the first thing the first piece of advice that I would give 25-year-old Alyssa is to ask more questions. I think in my mid 20s, I was at 25, I was already leading a team. And I had just been given responsibility to lead a team. And I thought because I was so successful in my career at that point, I mean, my little career that I had, but I was getting a lot of credit for what I was doing. I was getting a lot of positive feedback. People were saying I was doing a good job. So I had a team of two people, and I thought in order for them to be successful, they had to do what I was doing because I was successful, and clearly that's why I was asked to lead them. And I wasn't mature enough to ask them questions about how they would do things and understand the value in learning from these people who, I had done a great job in hiring. They were very accomplished people on in their own right. And yet I wanted to mold them into like clones of me because I thought that's what would make us successful. Right. So I didn't have the maturity yet to understand like borrow from what's around you, ask questions, continually learn, change yourself as you see people do things that are effective. And thankfully it didn't take me too long to start changing my ways. But I almost lost my whole team before I figured it out. So that's the advice that I would give is sort of like stop. You don't have all the answers, even though you're doing really well. Ask people around you what makes them successful, especially the people that are reporting to you.
Love that. And then let's kind of go into AI. How does AI changed what you do? And what advice do you have for people in marketing communication or crisis on how to utilize AI better and what to bring in and maybe what not?
So let's keep with the theme of problem finding and problem solving, right? I actually think AI is very helpful in both of those regards. So earlier I was mentioning one thing that you could do with AI, for instance, is have it review postmortems of previous incidents, previous crises, and call out for you things that you might have missed or that you might want to take care of in the future. Um, so I think one thing that you can do with AI very effectively is let it help you find problems to solve, right? Um, and and then I think it also can help you in brainstorming solutions to those problems. So, if you're getting up every day and looking for problems to solve and then trying to solve them, I think there are myriad ways in which you can use AI to do that. I also think that, AI keeps us on our toes as marketing and communications professionals. One of the things that I hear the most in PR conferences that I go to, or when I'm talking to my PR colleagues in the industry, is what is AI going to do to the 25-year-old Alyssa's out there, right? What is the path for people to enter into these professions now? What's the balance between using AI and staying ahead of AI? And I do think that part of it, I think, comes down to a balance of using AI to become better at what you do, but also getting back to basics and making sure that we're not not depending on AI to replace people who need to just understand, what does it mean to write well? What does it mean to anticipate issues that communications professionals will have to solve? AI can't do all of that for you. So making sure that you're staying back to basics, I think, in the age of AI is also something that's really important.
And we have a question here from Mark. Are there risks to using AI in crisis response? For sure there are, but do you want to share some?
I mean, there's risks to using AI in everything. There's risks to also not using AI in everything. Pick your risk. And look, I think for me, the best time to use AI in crisis response is in preparation. I wouldn't want to depend too heavily on AI in the midst of crisis response right now, only because I might not have the time to verify what it suggests I do. Right? And right now with AI, I think we're very much at the stage of trust but verify before you take actions, especially ones on which the entire reputation of your company may rest.
Absolutely. And AI hallucinates, guys. It just does. So if you're not working from like a RAG solution that has guardrails, AI hallucinates. So there is huge risk. Now, you should use AI smartly, but you just got to understand that if you're trying to move too fast and you can't verify, that can really lead to, not the most exciting things, especially not facing your executives, right?
Very exciting, but not necessarily the kind of exciting you want.
Absolutely. So this was one of the fastest half an hours, Alyssa. We wanted to share a little bit about something that happened in Viacry, but before that, is there anything else you would like to share with our audience? Is there anything else that we have some questions about AI here. I know that you don't consider yourself an AI expert, but maybe how AI changed how you do your day-to-day work. But I would love to hear a little bit more from you before we share a little bit of our news.
Well, I'm very eager to get to your news as well, by the way. Um, you know, I'm still, the way that I look at it is I'm still very much an AI freshman, right? There's a lot to learn. I don't know that I ever need to, by the way, complete graduate studies in AI in order to use it effectively for my job. But it's something that I'm studying every day. I'm learning every day. I'm finding new ways to use it every day. Right now, for me, the primary ways in which I use it, I love using it for deep research. I love using it to, I do a lot of competitive
What tools do
analysis.
you use?
I use a few different tools right now. So I am using ChatGPT. We have Copilot that I'm also using. Um, those are the primary two that I'm using right now. Certainly within the Bloomberg terminal, we also have AI tools that I'm fortunate enough to be able to use.
Yeah.
Um, so there's a number of things that I'm using, but in my day-to-day communications responsibilities, I'm using it primarily for research, helping me monitor conversations that are happening, out in the ether, um, and flagging things for me that I should be aware of, as well as the aforementioned planning. I use AI quite a bit to review my plans, point out things to me that might be logical pieces that I might have missed. So I also use it for that purpose on a daily basis.
That's amazing. So one thing I would like to share with some people here is RAGs, which stands for Retrieval Augmented Generation. Those are your own AI instances. And if you want to start with that, if anybody here knows Notebook LM, Notebook LM is a great tool that you can put a lot of data in and kind of work on your responses and do some research. Those are really incredible tool. Have you ever used Notebook LM, Alyssa?
Personally, I have not. I do have colleagues who have used it for different things. Certainly, we're very fortunate to have an
Your
industry
your
leading
your own instances, yeah.
engineering team at our disposal. So
That is awesome. So I'll share some of the news, and I would love, and I know we spoke about it a little bit, and you were so awesome. So guys, at Vicroy, we have some big news. We actually partnered up with Capgemini to create what we call eval, which is our AI readiness audit. And it is so exciting. It's exciting to have the trust of such a huge company like Cap, and it's exciting that they're putting us in front of their clients and their customers. Um, Super exciting. And I think, we just talked about don't move before you have a plan. With AI, you need a plan, everybody. And if you don't have a plan, you need to put one together. It doesn't mean you need to use us, but a plan. If you don't have a plan, you're going to make mistakes with AI. And I'm so excited. And I'm so excited to have you to share it with. But we are on like cloud nine right now with this partnership. And Capgemini, thank you for trusting us. And we're so excited. And if there's anybody out there that needs a AI roadmap, a readiness plan for AI, reach out to us. We would love to help you.
I'm so thrilled for you. This is such exciting news, and your success, I think, is inspirational. You've really, I think you've set out a great example of how AI can help people scale their business, and then using AI to help other people to scale their businesses. And I think it's amazing what you're doing.
Thank you so much. I love that. And I'll end with something, and I'd love your thoughts about it. A lot of people are afraid that AI is taking all the jobs or taking a lot of the jobs. Is AI taking jobs? 100%. AI is taking jobs. But AI is also bringing jobs that were never there before. And there are so many people that have a new opportunity now, and AI will bring as many jobs and it's going to take. So it's going to take a lot of the menial jobs that I think none of us are really interested in doing anyways. We're just doing it to get a salary, and it's going to open up things. So if I have advice for anybody here, whether you're doing marketing, communications, dive into AI and see how you can skill up. Again, you don't need to understand the whole technology. You don't need to do a master's in it. We use our cars and our phones without really knowing the technology behind them, but understand that it's going to change everything. Now, Alyssa, thank you. And can you share with everybody maybe how to follow what you're doing, maybe how to reach out to you, maybe a couple of things that you're looking for in the future before we finish?
Sure. I mean, I'm on LinkedIn, so that's a great place to find me. I love to have conversations with folks about marketing and communications, certainly about how AI is impacting our professions. That's probably the best way to find me. And really, I think just as a closing, I think what I'm looking forward to is understanding all the ways in which AI is going to help us unlock new things that we can do in our profession. And I'm also very conscious of maintaining that balance. Not all the jobs at the bottom of the career stack are menial. Some of them are meaningful. And so I think, help I think AI can help us increase our excellence, but I'm also really making sure that I maintain that focus on back to basics at the same time. So
Makes total sense. Now we have a question here, and I'm going to use it as a hook for you. Do you have any more training session planned? Thank you so much for this offering. Alyssa, you're very busy, but I will try to get you on again. I know it's not easy for you to take a break and come on, but it's valuable. And thank you for whoever the LinkedIn user. Please connect with me so I know who you are and connect with Alyssa. Thank you so much. You've been such a great friend, such an amazing professional, and a trailblazer to so many others. Alyssa, thank you for all you do, and I will try to get you in on another session.
thank you so much. Thanks to everyone who joined us today.
Thank you, guys. See you next time.